Hi, I'm Joanne Banko, author and online educator at letsgosew.com. And I'm a firm believer in learning to use your machine, learning the stitches that are built in, learning how to use them to the fullest, and coordinating with some of the feet that likely came with your machine. So today I want to give you some tips, tricks, and ideas to get you thinking about using the stitches that are built into your machine. There's a wide variety in our modern machines today, and a lot of stitches that are, maybe a little on the lowly side when we look at them, a zigzag, some, different things like that, but they have a lot of power and a lot of potential to really help you be a superstar stitcher. In my book, I talk a lot about needles, threads, stabilizers for embroidery, but the book is all about sewing and embroidery. So you need to learn to polish up those sewing skills so that you can create some garments from scratch or whatever you're doing, whether it's crafts, things like that. So let's start with some really ordinary tools. Seam gauge. This is a little old-fashioned, but it really, really works. It's a guide that screws right into the machine and it slides from left to right. So you can coordinate the point where your needle is going to stitch and where the edge of your fabric rides, and it gives a smooth edge guide. So I'm going to lower the presser foot. I've just got a regular straight stitch selected. I just want to show you how nice and neat that makes that. And if you look at your machine, you may already have one of these tools, but if you don't, I bet you're going to see a little hole there that's designed specifically for that screw to go right in. Okay, we're going to get to the end here. Just smooth that out. Raise the presser foot, and you can see how perfect my seam is. Nice, neat, and even, all because of that little guy that I just put right on the machine and helped me give me that guide. So I'm going to take that one off, and we're going to leave the regular presser foot on, but we're going to select another stitch that is very, very unique and very, very common. And I found that a lot of sewers really don't know quite how to use it, partially because of maybe the name of it. It is called, when you select it, the stem stitch. Well, that kind of makes you think of a little bit more of decorative techniques. It's absolutely something you could use for decorative. But if you use that simple stitch on a very basic knit fabric, you're going to see real quick what happens. First of all, the stitch has a little bit of a slant. It's almost like a cross between a straight stitch and a zigzag. And it's a little bit like a lightning bolt. I can also change the length, and I can change the width of the stitch, but changing the length is very appropriate for knits. Go ahead and stop this one and take it out. The magic in this stitch is when we stretch the fabric. That will go with the fabric and it will not pop. One more advantage, if we used a zigzag type stitch, when we open up the seam, we would find little puckers. Not with this stitch. It opens and presses perfectly, perfectly flat. So check in your machine, look and see if you have something that looks a little bit like a lightning bolt. If you do, you've got the stem stitch, and it's great not only for decorative work, but also for sewing and stretchy knits. My next favorite stitch is called a triple zigzag. You might have a triple zigzag, you might have a double zigzag, but it's a very, very, very common stitch. What I love about this stitch is the adjustability. So if I make that stitch narrower and a little bit shorter, it has now become the ideal stitch for overcasting fine fabrics. Maybe you have a serger in your repertoire, maybe you don't, but there are times that even if you have a serger, you just don't want to take the time to really, thread it, or maybe you don't have the right color thread. This stitch is pretty utilitarian, but it really does the job because it can be, again, changed. I can make that a little wider, make that a little longer, and it will give me total ravel resistance. That's what I need when I'm doing overcasting. So let's take a look at this one. Again, you could see when I lengthened that a little bit, made it a little wider, made a really smooth, nice, neat finish for that. The beauty of the triple zigzag stitch is it can be used on any fabric, from the sheerest, finest fabric to the heaviest weight type of upholstery fabric that you would do. Watch how easy it is to do it on this sheer. Again, we're going to adjust if necessary, but it's going to keep that fabric from raveling, give us a nice, smooth finish. So whether it's medium weight, fine weight, heavier weight, it's all gonna work. But we've also got some other stitches for overcasting fabrics that are a little bit heavier, like this decorator weight. In that case, I'm gonna change the foot. I'm going to snap on a foot that we call the overcasting foot. And this foot is very uniquely designed. Get that snapped on, get my thread underneath. This stitch is very uniquely designed when we select a stitch that coordinates with it. I can see right on my screen it's telling me to use foot G, and it has a little guide right built into that toe. So now I'm gonna run the edge of my foot along the raw edge right where that guide is. There's a little pin built into this stitch. The machine's automatically selected width and length for me. And literally, this is almost as close as you can get to a serger stitch because it is literally wrapping the thread around a pin, much like a serger does. And while I'm running this through, I want to mention why I have a Post-it note here and a Sharpie marker. If you take the time to get to learn these stitches, you may find some special settings for fabrics that you use regularly and you use often. When you do that, go ahead and jot those settings down right off of your screen and record that. Keep it with your sample so that next time you can just look at that sample, you're good to go, you're ready to start sewing on the next project. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the triple zigzag again because there was one more thing I wanted to show you. That is a super stretchy stitch. I'm gonna go back to the regular foot. This is my flattest foot. This is the foot that I like to use for straight and zigzag stitching. And that same triple zigzag that I used for overcasting is going to be the perfect stitch for me to lap stretch elastic over stretch fabric, the kind of thing you might use for loungewear, lingerie. I got a good length and a good width set there. Lengthen that just a little bit. I can stretch that lace right along the fabric. Stretch that a little bit more. And because this stitch takes 3 stitches each time it zigs and zags in that triple zigzag, we not only have really good coverage, we've got total elasticity. So I don't know about you, but there have been times when I've had lingerie that needs a little bit of repair. That's the perfect stitch for it. Okay, how about buttonholes? You've got special feet that help you with that. In this particular case, I have a foot where I snap the button right in, and then I simply snap the buttonhole foot on the machine. Select the buttonhole stitch. I have lots of different choices, lots of different shapes. We're just going to do the basic here. And I'm going to pull that little lever down, start on a basic piece of cotton, and my buttonhole is going to form to the exact length of the button that I have. You're going to see it's going to do a little bit of a, I'm going to get this thread out of here, of an unusual stitch where it's going backwards before it comes forward. I'm going to have a little mess there from that little tail. Clip that at the end. And then it's going to go backward and bar tack over it, bar tack at the end, and then bar tack on the other side. Everything is automatic. That's very commonly found in machines today. So don't be afraid to make samples, make different sizes, make take different buttons. If you have novelty buttons, you can look for other buttons that are similar size. Let me get my little scissors so I can clean that up a little bit. And we just snip that out. I'll give you another little tip on buttonholes. When it comes time to cut them, simplest way to do it is with a simple seam ripper. Take a straight pin and put a pin at the end of each bar tack, and then take your cutter and cut from the center to the end, and then the center to the end. That pin will stop you from accidentally cutting too far. If that's ever happened to you, you'll be glad for that tip. So we've got beautiful buttonholes with very little effort. Don't be intimidated by that. We've got lots of different ways to use these superstar stitches that make your sewing So much easier, so much smoother, gives you an easier and better way to really make use of all of your tools. Stretch knits, wovens, we have so many different types of fabrics today that you want to really experiment with stitch settings and lengths. So how about a blind hem stitch? That's another one that a lot of people think it's going to be a little bit difficult. It's slippery fabrics here, and especially on knits. So again, I've got a special foot for that. This particular foot is designed specifically for buttonholes. And when you have specialty feet, what they do for you mainly is they give you a guide that coordinates with the stitch. So you're going to see that in a minute. I meant to say blind hem, and I said buttonholes. So we're doing blind hem now. I'm going to do it on a knit fabric. I'm going to select the blind hem stitch, which is right here. I wanted you to just see for a second here, though, I've got two blind hems. So standard ordinary blind hem is the one here on the left. My stretch blind hem is on the right. So I'm going to simply line that up with the foot. I've got a guide. And it really sews, done with the buttonhole lever, so I got to raise that up. It simply sews just like a regular blind hem does, but instead of sewing only straight stitches, when it's traveling along the raw edge and then catching the hem, it's sewing that with a zigzag. You'll see that as soon as I take it out. Okay, so look at that. It sews little zigzags, jumps over, bites that fabric so that it just nips that fold. And the beauty of this, it's a stretch blind hem stitch. Check your machine, look and see what stitches you have, get lots of different fabric swatches out, make some samples.